Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for July 22nd, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. Right now, we continue to hold within a very narrow range at these highs. 2120 continues to be the key level. There's not really much to say that I haven't said over the last 2 weeks because it's kind of been the same. We pushed through 2120 and we're now holding on highs within this range. At some point, I believe that we'll see a breakout from this range. If it's to the downside, then I believe that bulls may want to come in at 2120 and defend for an attempt at squeezing higher yet again. If we break to the upside, be careful because any failed range expansion on these highs could be the indicator that brings us back down. At the moment, very difficult to buy at these highs unless you're buying dips and pullbacks. But we do have a very narrow range to watch on an intraday basis. So not a whole lot to do at the moment. But clearly, especially with how narrow price is over the last week of trading, we could be looking at significant expansion in the week ahead. Here's a look at the intraday time frame. All right, so if we're looking at the intraday time frame right now, again, what we've seen is basically price trade within this range here, trade within the range. And one thing we talked about yesterday was watching the 62 halves. 62 half was a very important level, 63, and what I mentioned was if price pushes below that level, look for a move into 2050 to 2051. Here was the break. Here was the retest precisely at 62 half, and then price drops into the 2053s where it ended the day. So we've seen a lot of battle around 62 half, and right now we're seeing more chop around that zone. So right now 62 half is kind of the midpoint of the range, or kind of that middle ground. Above that level opens up a return back towards 69.72. Below it opens up a return into the lower area of support down here between 49 and 52. So right now, a lot of back and forth, and you really got to be patient and again fade the edges of the range. Let's take a look at crude oil. Here's crude. Let's take a look at the daily time frame right now. One thing about the daily time frame is that price continues to chop around the micro composite VPOT at 45.88. And this is what I mentioned before. When you're trading around this level, it's very difficult because it's nothing but chop, 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 back and forth. In the previous session, we've seen a couple of sessions here where prices above 45.88 have been offered. So offered here, offered there. And that's an early indication here of what may be to come. So keep an eye on this zone because if price continues to be offered, we could be looking at the next push lower. At the moment, we're testing levels below the previous support here and have now just rejected back into the range. So right now, the failure to hold below 44.55, 44.50 is important. And if price continues to reject prices below 44.50, that could imply a move right back up toward value between 45.60 and 45.88 short term. If we look at the intraday time frame for crude oil again, you got to be careful here. We're chopping a lot around that MCV-POC. There's a lot of chop back and forth, and it's very difficult to see, where the edges are sometimes. But really, the 44.40s has been an edge in the range. We got very close to there a couple of days ago before it bounced, and this time we actually got just below that 44.40 and have now rejected. You see this 45 right here, very important level. Right now, bears are trying to keep that area offered, but there are buy stops above it. So should price push through 45s, that could be the gateway back toward value between 45.60 and 45.88. So right now, keep an eye on 44.50. A retest of 44.50 could be a buying opportunity short term. So you see these participants were trapped here below the previous week's low price. And so what I would say right now is if price drops into this zone here, about 44.40 to 44.50, look for bulls to trap and defend this zone for a shot at squeezing to 5-day VPOC at 45.77. And again, that would go through these 45s where there are currently buy stops above that zone. So pullbacks right here could be a buying opportunity up to this zone. Failure to hold 44.50 opens up another round of selling pressure ahead. Let's take a look at gold futures here. One thing we talked about with regards to gold in the previous sessions was that if price drops, we have to be very, very patient about it as this thing was pulling back, but I mentioned if price drops into this LVN between 1306 and 1310, that was the zone right there to defend for a potential push and a rally into 1370 to 1380. And price came into 1310.7, formed a low, and rallied the rest of the day. Now we're seeing a pullback in overnight trading. That pullback is taking you right into this midpoint of the previous session's day. That usually would be an area for bulls to defend, especially if you look off to the left here. It was prior support. So coming back into this zone right here is very important. That's about 1323. So if you look here, the midpoint of the previous session was 2240. Right now we have a low under the day of about 1321.5. So that's the zone right there to watch. This is the area for bulls wanting to defend for a shot at squeezing to these highs. Failure to hold above 22s opens up a retest of lows and perhaps drops this thing proper into the LVN. Now I will say, every time price drops into this zone, it's still likely a buying opportunity until it gives up. This area is support. It is to be defended for a push higher. Failure to hold that level will result in a move back lower toward previous support and VPOC between 1243 and 1250. All right, lastly, let's take a look at the NQ. Here's the NQ. The NQ has been quite bullish. We've mentioned this before. Price is held above 45.50 and continued to hold above that zone and continues to push to new highs. Right now we're holding above the midpoint of the squeeze day here. That was another defense zone right there. So right here, the midpoint being 46.28 rather, 46.28, a big time zone there. It was defended. It continues to be held. So any failure to hold that level could auction things back down toward 45.50. If so, that could be a short-term area to defend. Failure to hold 45.50 again opens up more weakness. But right now, this has been an upside trending market. Pullbacks have been defended. And so any pullback still likely to be defended until proven otherwise or until we see a significant rejection day on highs, which we have not seen thus far. Now, I did mention before, if you push through 45.50 and hold, as we are, there is a tendency to rally to the next highest resistance level of the previous price distribution. So we could be looking at a continuation higher till we reach the 47.20 to 47.50 zone right in this area. So we could be looking at further strength into those highs unless we see rejection ahead of that. So right now, continued overall strength in the NQ likely to be seen short term, but there's not a whole lot of volume right now. Been very quiet. Here's an intraday look right now. Basically on an intraday basis, price is holding above that key zone we talked about. You can see the bend in the profile. Here's 46.25, and you can see kind of that bend right there. That's the support zone right now that bulls are defending. Bulls want to keep this area bid. It was resistance, then it went bid and held as support. So any rotation here could be a short-term buying opportunity for a push higher. Failure to hold above 46.25 on the hold today could lead to a return back to 5-day VPOC at 45.94s. All right, that's it for now. Let's see how this thing plays out the rest of the session. Good luck, trade well, and happy Friday.